Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Garbage Game Club. We are talking about...
You don't want to do another one like we can count into it?
No, we're just going. This is
Nick,
Into the Breach Garbage Game Club. I'm Nick Leone, and
4,
joining me today,
3,
we
2.
have...
I thought we were starting over.
No, you just say your name real quick.
I'm Joey.
There you go. But we're here for Garbage Game Club, Into the Breach. Joey, what is Into the Breach?
Hopefully, fully, that's not bad for your credit. What emoji should I send with that? None? Alex didn't pay rent. What? Oh, we're doing a podcast?
Yeah.
Into the... Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome to Garbage Game Club, episode...
doesn't count. You gotta stop. You already messed it up.
6.
This is episode 6. Wow.
It's taken us a long time to do 6 episodes.
Well, I mean, it's playing a whole game.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Kind of takes a long time.
We're gonna. To be fair, though, I feel like we gotta come clean to the audience. We could have recorded this 2 weeks ago.
Yes. We could have.
We could have recorded this 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this time I'll say it was my fault.
Yeah.
I'll say it was my fault.
Yeah.
Because for this Garbage Game Club, it was a community Patreon choice episode.
Ooh.
And y'all decided that we were going to play Into the Breach. Into the Breach being a game by the makers of Faster Than Light, or FTL for the cool kids, which was a hit last year. It won quite a few Game of the Year awards.
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty popular, critically acclaimed, and also, like, fan acclaimed.
Yeah, and we're not talking, you know, what's Into the Breach? How is it winning Game of the Year awards? It's not God of War, because it's not.
It's not. It's not a AAA game at all. It's made by 2 people.
Yeah, it is. It is a Game of the Year non-AAA game.
Mm-hmm.
And it is damn cool.
Yeah, Into the Breach is developed by Subset Games. It is available on the Nintendo Switch, the Windows Store, Steam, all that jazz, and it has won the Game Award for Best Strategy Game, a bunch of BAFTA awards, and I think it might have been nominated for a couple of Jeff Keighley's. But Into the Breach is a turn-based strategy, tactical role-playing game.
Whew.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Wait, so off the top of my head, I've been calling it a turn-based strategy, an isometric turn-based strategy roguelike. That's what I've been calling it. Is that correct?
I think isometric is kind of unnecessary because typically strategy games are usually isometric to some extent.
Turn-based strategy roguelike.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the word tactical is kind of integral there because tactical implies some sort of like individual unit control.
Does that come from Final Fantasy Tactics?
Maybe, but I think that's a mainstay from some like old era, like those old Dungeons and Dragon games like Planescape Torment, Baldur's Gate, and all that jazz. There's to some extent like in a typical strategy game like StarCraft or blah blah blah. You don't usually control individual units. You usually control like whole squadrons, and you don't micromanage. Like you can't. There's no skill tree for an individual unit. It is usually like the units as a whole. Whereas in a game like Final Fantasy Tactics or Into the Breach in this sense, you can actually upgrade a character from like nothing and turn him into kind of a godlike warrior. But one thing that really stood out to me in this game was just like the game is very fun, and we'll get into the actual loop of it in a second, how it's the most addicting thing of all time. But the thing that really stood out to me was the ambiance of it, like the actual tone and like the atmosphere of the game in combination with the storytelling, because for the most part, there's not too much of a story. Like the setup of the game is that humanity has fallen to an alien invasion of bugs called the Vec, and in one reality of existence, the Vec have won and overcome humanity, and the world has plunged into apocalypse. But there is a company, an organization, that has assembled these mechs that are kind of dedicated to fighting and combating the Vec, and they've discovered time travel technology. And so what they do is they get inserted into different timelines, and every single time you play the game, that's a new timeline that you're in. So if you fail, that timeline gets abandoned. You choose one surviving member of your squad, and then you just get dropped into another timeline and be like, well, I hope you do better this time. But if you win, it's like, great. If you complete a campaign from beginning to end, the game says, well done. This timeline is saved. Let's move on to the next one. So there's like an in-world reason for why you would continue playing a new game. And there's like a lot of carryover with rewards and character building. So there's just, it's a nice, neat little cohesive package of world building, storytelling, and music. My God, the music is real nice.
And the fun thing about that, I guess, is that it functions just enough to be worthwhile or give you a nugget or be like, okay, this is the construct of what's going on. But it doesn't do anything to go over that marker. Like, it sets up what I would call a bare minimum acceptable story and world building.
Yeah, and it leaves a lot of room to interpretation because it kind of assumes that this is a dystopic future, not because humanity has already fallen to these aliens, but also the way resources are distributed among the survivors. In the game, you are presented with several islands when you begin a new campaign, and each island is kind of locked off until you beat one island, and then you earn the right to move on to another island where the game gets like a step more difficult. But if in one timeline you achieve up to Island 2, the game remembers that, so whenever you drop into another new timeline after you inevitably fail, you can actually pick whichever island you want. But the people occupying these islands are what's interesting to me. It's another like little tiny bit of storytelling that's nice. It's each island or each surviving like aspect of humanity is governed and kind of run by a corporation. Each island is run by a single like individual leader, and they each have their own agendas. Like, hey, we're all about the environment in this place. There's an AI that's all about the environment in this Arctic tundra. He's like, hey, there's a lot of robots here. Just be cool to them. You know, they'll take care of us. But also, like, sorry, they're kind of rogue. And then there's other there's like a desert area where there's just everyone has an agenda, and you can tell that like this is a capitalist society that has fallen. Like it's pretty cool. But the game doesn't hit you over the head with that. There's just a lot to interpret there.
And if you don't want to, like yours truly, you don't have to give a single flying fuck about any of that.
Why is that?
To enjoy the game. If this game was played with squares, circles, chess pieces with no storytelling and no assets, I think I would have enjoyed it nearly 100% as much. Because while it is cool to have the little bit of world building, a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of dystopic and dystopic future, it's really the core gameplay which is engaging and trumps everything else we've talked about to this point.
And what is that core gameplay loop? Because I agree, like you can give a shit about the story. It just you stay because the game feels good.
The game feels great. And I think the game feels great for people who are looking for a strategy game. So I consider myself someone who enjoys strategy and puzzle games. If you're talking strategy, I've always loved, Warcraft 3, StarCraft, stuff like that. Company of Heroes, Command and Conquer, like your true strategy, like RTS action strategy games. And then if you're talking puzzle games, those are also things that have just interested me. Even from like your Picto puzzles or your Scribble Knots or your The Witness or whatever puzzle you want to name. Like, I mean, I've always liked both of those things, which is why it was interesting to me that I didn't immediately pick up Into the Breach with all of its praise, because like, oh man, it's like a good puzzle turn-based strategy game. I'm like, whatever. And I think I realize now that was a mistake and I shouldn't have whatevered it, because Into the Breach drops you into these little one island maps at a time.
It's a grid-based map.
It's a grid-based map. So I should know what the dimensions are because I've done like 50 playthroughs because it's a lot. Because spoiler up top, I like the game. It drops you into one grid-based map. The map isn't moving. You're not changing the scenery. You see what's going on from the outset, and then you drop your 3 units. Every game you're controlling 3 units. There's a bunch of pre-built squads. So normally it's like one that's like a really broody unit that can get in someone's face, one that's more of a ranged unit, and one that's a utility unit. And those 3 make up your team. And then you go through a number of rounds on the map. So
You have to fight the Vec off for at least 5 rounds.
At least 5 rounds. So you start off round 1. The Vec take their turn first. So the Vec move into position and queue up their attacks. And what are they attacking? Certain map objectives.
Usually every single map, the whole point of the game is to make it from beginning to end and wipe out the Vec invading forces. And on paper, that sounds pretty simple, but you have a universal power meter. That's kind of
it's your HP bar.
Yeah, it's your HP bar that is like it continues from map to map. It is consistently moving forward or backwards depending on how well you do. And the way you basically get game over in the game is if that HP meter goes down to 0, and that's your power. And the power is controlled via cities and towns that are located on each of these grids. And for the most part, that's the primary target of the Vec. They are giant alien bugs that are attacking giant cities, so your goal is to assemble your squad of giant mechs to take them out. It's basically Pacific Rim or Gundam, and you're fighting aliens and you're trying to defend a city and also the resources of this futuristic civilization.
Yeah, and I mean, we're jumping around a little bit. I probably should have wrote this out so we could have talked about it.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, so I mean, you're defending your cities from the monsters, and that's their primary target. So you are gonna you need to prioritize now. So in most games, and I think a lot of people miss this sometimes, is that you have to think of health as a resource. Like, losing health isn't always a bad thing. Like, say you're playing Hearthstone. You know, health is a resource. Sometimes you need to take face damage because that's the most advantageous move. So when you're playing Into the Breach, you're going back and forth between, okay, how do I keep my health up? When am I allowed to take health damage? When should I prioritize other objectives over health? When should I prioritize killing the Vec? When should I prioritize leaving them alive? And it turns into this game of tactics of just simply, you know, what is most advantageous for you, which I guess you can describe most strategy games like that. But here, you're balancing your health. You're balancing the Vec's life. You're balancing every round more alien Vex spawn. Mm-hmm. So there's a fun mechanic in the game where if you are blocking the tile they spawn on, it delays their spawn for 1 turn and damages 1 unit damages 1 point of health to the unit blocking it. So maybe you want to block Vex spawn, maybe you want to kill Vec, maybe you want to take damage to protect another objective. And that core gameplay loop of figuring out what is the most optimal strategy in your turn to use your 3 units for, all of which have, you know, limited range, limited movement, different abilities based on which squad you're using, is where the core gameplay is really derived from. And it's cool because since there are so many different units to play around with and pre-built squads to play around with, that even though a core game on a medium difficulty will probably take about an hour, you can play this game a lot.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I didn't realize when I first started playing it. I definitely suffered from the I lost a piece of health, therefore I failed. Like, oh no, this isn't good. And so it took a while for me to be like, no, it's okay that I lose health because sometimes that's the most strategic thing that can happen. Like, that, I think the beauty of this game lies in the difficult choices that have to be made. Usually games like this that involve mechs, it's all about or just like mecha anime in general. It's all about being a badass and saving the day, and you're the hero, and look how cool you are. You did it effortlessly. But in a realistic war-like scenario, sacrifices have to be made, and sometimes you might have to kill like innocent civilians. You might have to let them die because it is going to be for the greater good of humanity that they do. Because, hey, in the turn that they destroyed a city, that gave your mechs the opening to flank and also destroy. Or sometimes it's the literal decision that has to be made. It's the difference between a game over and losing another blip of health. And a nice little detail that showcases whenever you lose a city is that it'll showcase the population of that city, and it's like minus 345 people, and you're just like, oh no, these people were innocent. They didn't do anything, and now I failed, or I risked their lives, and this is what happened. And to me, like, that's cool. That's just, it feels Like
yeah, you killed people.
There's actual
so you can protect
risk.
something else.
There's actual risk and reward, and it feels good knowing like, hey, I made the right decision. Like this definitely harkens back to a game like Advance Wars, where every time you're presented with a map, which is usually procedurally generated, or there's like not procedurally generated. There's like a pool of maps that they choose from, and then the RNG chooses one random map, and you get plotted down on it. But what I appreciate, it is a puzzle in that there is a correct way to make your way through the map and win and do it effortlessly. Every time you fail to adhere to that perfect plan is when you have to compromise. And you compromise because you messed up a little bit somewhere along the way.
The game isn't unfair to you.
Correct. It is
ever. Like there are solutions, and there are always solutions from the beginning. So if you mess up maybe a couple turns back, you might feel those impact a couple turns later that you might not have seen originally.
Or you might have been like, well, it's okay if I lose 2 bars of health in this map because I'm going to be fine when I get to the next one, because the next map, whenever you move across the map, you are able to choose what mission you want to take on, and each mission showcases what the reward is for completing that mission. So it might be regenerated health, currency so that you can upgrade your mechs, or what's the third one?
You get to upgrade mechs. You get star points.
Oh yeah, you get
for
star
reputation.
Points where you star points where you can actually buy upgrades like new mechs, upgrades, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I mean, you can upgrade the weapons on your mech. You can add new weapons to your mech. You get to choose the pilot of your mech, which is fun.
And each one has like their own unique hidden abilities, where as you level them up from 1 to 3, their hidden abilities become apparent to you.
So you can definitely draft more OP teams if you get like good runs. And between runs, since you get to keep one pilot, if you have a pilot that you really like, either their passive abilities or what kind of level they are, you can bring them all with you on the next mission, assuming they don't die, because there is permadeath for pilots in this game.
Yeah, you might have just not misclicked, but you might have maybe underestimated what would have happened in a particular scenario, and you're like, oh shoot, I didn't even realize he had 1 health bar left. He dies, and his like husk of a mech is just left on the map, occupying space. It is blocking paths. It is still able to be moved via attacks and things like that, but he's gone. Your mech pilot is gone.
It is. It's very fun in the sense. I'm someone who, while I talked about liking the first couple aspects of this game, generally does not. I'm someone who does not like roguelike games. And
why is that though?
I'm not a huge fan of the repetition. I'm not a huge fan of permadeath. I'm not a huge fan of feeling like I make progress only to like lose and then come back. It's not like I guess sometimes people like roguelikes because you feel like you're building up a repertoire of skills and you watch yourself progress and get better, and it's cool to see, you grow. But generally those are mechanics that I don't find too enjoyable on a personal level. But I think I think that Into the Breach does something smart where it takes some of the light elements of roguelike, where you can transfer one of your pilots from game to game that you've upgraded. You can unlock new islands that are there permanently. You can unlock new teams of mechs that are there permanently. And there's a certain element of randomness that carries over from roguelikes that are fun, that normally there's like the idea of RNG in strategy in games are they butt heads. People complain about if you're playing a card game RNG sometimes because it can feel not fair. But all the RNG in Into the Breach feels very fair, and like it makes the game more interesting because it's like, oh hey, what pilot did I randomly unlock out of the pool of select pilots? What upgrades were given to me? What things are on sale at the shop? What does my island look like? What are the actual maps on the island when they spawn, because they're procedurally generated? So it takes what feels to me like the non-abrasive roguelike elements and puts them into the strategy game, which gives it a smaller design loop, or like iteration loop, gameplay loop. There we go. I found it. 3rd time's the charm. It gives a smaller gameplay loop, which makes it ideal for like short sessions, without feeling like you have to play it 1,000 times before you get a victory. Because, I mean, you can open up Into the Breach and win the first time, I think. I don't think I won until my 4th map. But after I won on my 4th map, I proceeded to win about 80% of my games, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. Similar scenario in my case. I won once I discovered I could swap out mechs. It took me a while, and I was like, man, I really like this game a lot, but I wish I could change my mechs out. And that's when I looked at like my main menu, just because every time I lost, I just went immediately back in because it felt good. Like you said, the gameplay loop is so short, and it feels so right. Like each map will probably take you like 5 minutes to beat, roughly.
Each individual. I mean, I guess we can be confusing about the terminology. The individual level, like one of the puzzles,
each
will probably
mission,
take about 5 minutes ish, and each mission 5 minutes. But each island, which is a collection of missions,
it's usually 5
will probably take about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then you can do. It's cool because also, so there's 4 islands you can choose from, and then a 5th final boss island. You can complete the game after doing at least 2, 3, or 4 islands. So you can do a quick run, only beating 2 islands and going to the final boss and winning shortly, or you can do a longer run where the gameplay gets harder over time as the islands progress, but you're now more powerful because you've had more missions completed, so you have more money for upgrades and stuff like that.
Yeah, the game scales to how long you've been playing it in that particular timeline.
So I prefer to play 4 island games.
Yeah, me too. I always do 4 island games because I think you see the most rewarding like transformations, and it taps into that Final Fantasy Tactics like sweet spot for me, where I can turn a pathetic unit into a god based on how I kind of build them. And in building them correctly, it makes you feel like, oh, I earned this. And in that earning is where you're like, wow, I'm very good at this game.
Yeah. How do you feel about the difficulty setting? So there's an easy, medium, hard. What did you start playing on? How did you feel about that? And then what difficulty did you settle on?
I started on medium, and that's what I did for probably my first 4 or 5 victories. And then after that, I bumped it up to hard. I never played easy once, and hard is pretty hard. I've only won, I want to say, like 2 or 3 hard, and I feel like it's not as fun for me because I want to just kind of pick it up when I hop on the toilet, play a couple maps, and then hop out, and I'm good to go. But I feel like a hard, it's bad on my body on that toilet for that long.
Yeah, because you do have a habit of doing long poops. I do have to plan sometimes my bathroom usage around Nick's gameplay bathroom usage.
But yeah, I think medium was the appropriate like.
Medium's what the game is balanced around, and hard is an intentional challenge that gets better the more mechs you have unlocked, so you can, like, you know, abuse combinations or try and gain unfair advantages from all your rewards to benefit you in hard mode. So I like the game is best played on easy. I'm sorry, the game is best played on medium. The game is, I think, best learned on easy. I almost wish that it really suggests you play your first map on easy.
Yeah, but I think there's something satisfying about like thinking you have a grasp of the mechanics, and then the game throws something at you and you realize like, oh, I just need to be exposed to that more. I like that because it is such a small loop though. Like I feel like I didn't lose 40 hours and I have to start from 0. It's more like, oh, I lost 10 minutes, but I learned something.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, I have like a 3-hour Enter the Gungeon playthrough. What am I ever gonna do?
One mechanic we haven't talked about that I think is really smart is the ability to turn back time for 1 turn, the ability to reset 1 turn. So as we established already, like the in-lore reason why this is all happening, why every single new game is a new timeline, is because this company that funds these mechs has the ability to time travel. And so innately, the obvious choice for anyone who's willing to nitpick any narrative is like, well, why can't they just turn back time in the middle of a map? Well, you can. You can, but it's going to cost you. And you have the ability to turn back time once in every single mission. And you don't turn back time to the beginning of the mission. You reset 1 turn specifically. So of the 5 turns that a mission takes, you get to replay the previous turn over again. So if you realize, like, I made a grave error in moving my mech
Which
here.
might be a misclick.
Which might be a misclick, but the game is pretty forgiving about misclicks and stuff
Or it
like
might
that.
be a misclick. It might be a, oh no, I'm fucked. Or like maybe you try a strategy that you didn't think out all the way, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't do that.
Oh, it's like, oh, I realized that tile was going to fall in the 4th round, and I'm on the 4th round now, and oh no, I didn't plan that out properly. Oh, geez, or I thought I equipped this ability that would allow me to push this thing out of the way in time. Oh man, I forgot to do that. And so the game lets you be like, okay, you screwed that up, so you can reset time one more time.
Once per level.
Which is really fun. And there's something about that I think is just so smart. And I was trying to figure out why is that such a smart inclusion in the game. And then I did a little digging, and I learned today that the game was written, or features writing, by Chris Avellone, one of my favorite writers in the games media, who he wrote Planescape Torment, he wrote Fallout New Vegas, he's writing Dying Light 2, and I think he might also have his hand in the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order a little bit. But so yeah, the guy has some serious like RPG writing chops in his repertoire. So it's just...
So this was just an afternoon for him, right?
Yeah, it's just one of those things where... I don't know, though. I think that there's some writers have a tendency to overwrite things that don't need to be overwritten. And I think that it takes a wise writer kind of the ability to step back and think, like, what is appropriate for this game? What amount of writing is appropriate? What are we trying to achieve here? Is it a story that's being told? Not really. We're trying to go for a feel here. And I think he nails that feel perfectly. He understands it.
And again, if you want to pay attention to that, you'll appreciate it. If you don't want to pay attention to it and you just want to play the puzzles, that's fine too, which I think is a sweet spot that really caters to 2 different markets. Particularly 2 different markets we're talking right now. Like, I mean, Nick is very much the former, and I'm very often the latter. So
see, but I think they complement each other well. Gameplay as like a feel as while for story people, gameplay is feel for story people, and then story as feel for people who like the game, like just the gameplay loop itself. Because even though you might not be consciously aware of what's happening, you're kind of thrust in the trappings of it, and just being surrounded by it helps elevate the experience to another level subconsciously. It's like the reason why you kind of feel a little bit good after listening to an upbeat song. Sure, you could be someone who analyzes the song and is like, well, I feel good because these beats right here achieve this tempo, and that tempo is historically known to feel good for humans, blah, blah, blah. But you could also just be like, I just experienced it, and it was all part of the experience, and it just felt right.
God, I'm having a crazy deja vu moment. Did we use that analogy before?
I like to say that because a lot of people, I've said that before, because a lot of people do say, well, the story doesn't really matter, because it was like, well, no, it does, because it complements the experience in a way you might not even be aware of. It's like eating food because, like, it tastes good, sure, but it might be bad for you. So, like, there's something hidden underneath that you are still benefiting, or something is detracting from your overall experience, and you might not be able to put your finger on it. The thing you might not be able to put your finger on is a thing you might not have a taste for, but ultimately it changes the experience, and hopefully for the better.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, I mean, even if you're not completely invested in, what's going on, just having it on in the background and kind of osmosising it does improve the experience.
It's like playing when Coral, you, Adam, and I played Pandemic, and then we put the soundtrack for The Thing on in the background. Like, it suddenly transformed this board game experience into something that felt more sinister and, like, pressing, like, and oppressive and whatnot.
Garbage Game Club mini tip: if you have 4 friends and a couple months to kill, you should buy a copy of Pandemic Legacy, because you'll probably have a very good time.
Yeah, and also play John Carpenter's The Thing soundtrack in the background while you play. It's very good.
But if we're not talking about board games, and we're talking about fake board games, which is kind of what Into the Breach is to a degree, man, I finished Into the Breach pretty shortly after we announced as the next episode. I'm like, I'm going to play this now. And then I played on a trip. I probably put in 5-6 hours, and I'm like, I like this. I think I'm going to probably play this on airplanes later on in my life. But, like, I don't need to play more. I'm okay. Like, I'm not jonesing for it. Then I went on another trip recently, still before this podcast, obviously, and I proceeded to 100% the game.
Oh, wow.
I very quickly went from 5 or 6 hours to, oh, I'm just going to unlock all the achievements. Yeah, that's the natural course of progression that I'm going to do here. Because achievements in this game are what you use as currency to unlock new mech squads and new units to play the game with.
That's my favorite kind of achievement.
Yeah, so you get rewarded for it. The achievements are fair and fun, and they force you to do like interesting things with the gameplay mechanics. So it's like a masterclass on a cool way to use achievements. They're not like, Xbox, live points. It's not your gamer score. It's so that you can keep playing the game more and expand your knowledge and grow. So the achievements are fun, and I recently, a couple weeks, last week, I'm like, okay, well, gonna get all of them, because when you do get all of them, you unlock a final squad, which I wanted to try.
Ooh, what is it?
Do you really not know?
No, I don't.
You get to play as the Vec.
Oh, that's really cool.
So you get to use the same mechanics that they've been using against you now as units, and it also gives you a moment to realize, if you turn it back on yourself, how they're just an opposite version of you. They're monsters, and you dehumanize them, and you just kill thousands of them. But then you realize, like, they're just doing the same things that you're doing.
So how does the rule set change when you're the Vec? Does it?
Well, it's like your mechs are Vec. So, like, your tanky mech becomes a pushing mech that can charge as many spaces as it wants and then deal damage.
Oh,
and
but you're still fighting Vec, though.
You're still fighting Vec.
Gotcha,
so you're Vec fighting Vec. You have like a ranged artillery one that also pushes. You have one of the Hornets that do damage AOE style and pushes.
Fuck, now I just want an expansion though, where you have a full campaign as the Vec, where you can actually like breach the ground at once a turn and stuff like that, and like you have to fight mechs. That'd be. Oh.
I'm sure that on some writer's wall that would be
Oh, that's so cool.
Out of the breach.
Yeah. Right.
Because that seems like a very natural progression for what they would do with a different game like this, and I'd play it because I enjoyed the first one. I don't know if I would call it a universal recommendation though, like some other things we've talked about. Like when we're talking about Obra Dinn, by and large, I'm like, hey, yo, dog, you should play that game. You'll probably like grow as someone who enjoys games or an analysis, and you might take something out of it. I don't think Into the Breach is that level of like, everyone should play this game. It's definitely a game for people who are interested in one of the mechanics we've talked about. So if you know that you're not like a strategy puzzle person, you're probably not going to enjoy it, and you're probably not going to play it. And some of the things you said are probably confusing to you, and you might not be listening right now unless you really like the way that Nick and I sound. Or you're sleeping because you fell asleep, or you're on the road and NPR is after hours. I don't know. But I feel like I can't tell everyone to play Into the Breach, because it definitely has some confounding variables of you like turn-based strategy games, you like puzzle games, you're kind of into like more avant-garde roguelikes, or maybe you don't have experience with those things and you want to try it. That I think is worthwhile. But if you look at the game, if you watch a minute of gameplay and you're like, it's probably not for you.
Well, that was your reaction when you saw it, though.
No, so my reaction when I saw it was, I'm someone who likes some of those elements. Not all of them, some of them. I like turn-based strategy games. I like puzzle games. That feeds into the stuff I like. I was turned off by the tagline of roguelike. Was enough to turn me off.
Oh, that's fair. For me, I think this game is perfect if you like Final Fantasy Tactics and you're like, shit, I wish Square would make another Final Fantasy Tactics. This is that, but on a smaller scale. If you like Fire Emblem at all, you would probably really like this game. You can't make your units have sex, unfortunately, but maybe in the sequel. If you like Advance Wars, this is basically Advance Wars, but with mechs and fewer units, which is perfect for a plane ride. It's perfect for a train commute, whatever. And I also think this game is a perfect palate cleanser. The thing that I find myself every now and then is like, you play so many games over the years and you kind of get burned out on games after a while. As humans, we have a tendency to kind of acclimate to a type of thing. So if you like to play games, and you're like, oh, I like to play shooters. you tend to play mostly shooters for whatever
Playing
reason.
a lot of Apex.
You play
Playing a lot of Dota.
And that'll burn you out sometimes. You're just like, nah, I just don't feel like it right now. And that's okay. You're totally allowed to feel that way. But sometimes it's helpful to try something new that you might not have ever considered as something you would enjoy. And I think this game is one of those games. It is the perfect, like, maybe this will get me out of my gaming funk, as it were. Or maybe this is the little zag where I thought my life was going to zig a bit. And it's a nice little zag for those who were unaware. I wholeheartedly recommend you check this out if you have any interest in those things or interest in just trying something you might not have played before.
Yeah, I think I agree with this. Is this like more of a bite-sized podcast for a bite-sized game?
Yeah, I feel like it's appropriate because I feel like we covered the mechanics of it. And again, it is just one of those things where we can gush about it all day, but really the best like snapshot of the game is just feeling how the game plays, like getting in. I
recommend getting it on Switch.
Yeah, the Switch is.
It is a
pretty dang good,
fantastic example of what a good Switch game can be because it's portable.
This would also be a game that, if it was on mobile, I think would make a lot of sense, and I think that would also be a very good way of playing.
Touch controls are kind of like,
but the game is so forgiving about like misclicks and stuff like that. It works.
There'd have to be like an icky UI for the touch controls.
Fire Emblem always pisses me off because it's very unforgiving when it comes to like misclicking or like, oh, I just wanted to see what it would look like if I moved my unit here and what the range would be if I moved the unit there. And it was like, nope, fuck you. You are committing to that spot. And I was like, well, I didn't want to do that. So it's like the smart design choices complemented by a small gameplay loop that always feels good. You're guaranteed at least 15 hours of enjoyment. But if you're like Joey or me, you'll probably put in at least 30.
Yeah, I put in even more. I realized that we didn't start the podcast with some of this information, which is bad.
What, this info?
The info I'm about to say.
Oh, what were you going to say?
Well, I mean, fuck, man. We didn't even, introduce ourselves. We didn't say that, right now we're actually recording this live on our Twitch channel.
They know who we are.
But here's the thing, Nick. The people watching know who we are. The people watching know who we are. But, you can get this podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts. And people have told me in person, thank you, Carl Swaggin, that they like it. So, maybe there's people who might come from outside. They might see it on a podcast player. They might be on a weird recommendation list. And maybe we should try harder to use our community to lift us towards those lists, More watch time, more reviews, more things to try and get more eyeballs on the podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
Spoiler, as we do, some restructuring in what Cyber Garbage is in terms of an online Twitch presence, there is going to be more of a focus back onto this show and Joey Hates Movies. So while it is awesome that particular right now you can watch us live online, downloads on your apps, however you normally support podcasts or subscribe to them is going to be very helpful for us moving forward. So I think we would really, really appreciate that because maybe there's a world where one day we can have an ad-sponsored reader. We get people into the community from the podcast side and not just the Twitch side. And I think that's going to be very important for us for growth through the end of the year and also next year. So,
and I'd love to have, if our podcast has enough reach, that'd be more incentive for us to get guests on the show. And I would love to have a guest host.
Wait, guests?
Yeah.
Nick, I'm very antisocial.
No, I mean, I am too, but I think that's what the kids like nowadays.
What, are we going to invite Markiplier on?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, fuck.
Hey, Markiplier here. Oh, yes.
I'm so genuine. God, I really shouldn't do that. I work with him. Kind of. Anywho.
Oh, name drop over there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Name drop over there.
Do you know that I was hanging out with Golden Boy the other day when we were shooting with Kenny Omega? You're going to Comic-Con and meeting a bunch of famous people, Nick.
I hung out with Kenny Omega a little bit.
Yeah.
I was drunk near him. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, you're like, hey, Kenny. We're getting off topic. Point being, I'm Joey. That's Nick. This is Garbage Game Club. It's one of our two podcasts on Cyber Garbage. And I'm being Joey Hates Movies. You can get it wherever you get podcasts. And if you could subscribe and like or 5-star, do whatever those things are.
Leave us a review.
It'll be very helpful. Truly, I'd appreciate your time.
One thing that I ask of you is if you watch this live right now and you're like, well, I don't need to download that podcast because I just watched it. That's fine.
Please
you don't have to.
Can you download it and then play it and then delete it?
No, just download it. Just download it. That's all. Just download it. Subscribe.
On Spotify?
Yeah, leave a comment.
On wherever.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I use a program called Podcast Addict, which is fed in just via an RSS feed.
We're doing a lot of promotion now.
Yeah.
And humble bragging.
Yeah, they go hand in hand, really. We'll record a pickup of our intro in a second, which is fine.
I don't think we have to, right?
It'll take 2 seconds for me to throw in.
Oh.
But what's our next game, Joey?
We haven't talked about this.
Let's discuss it right now.
Because I'm going to throw one out there.
Oh, God, that means it's a long one.
No. Okay, so no, here's the thing. So if we want to get in the weeds, in the meta of the podcast for a second, in the meta of Cyber Garbage, which we'll go into later because a lot of people know that we are transitioning to do things a little bit differently at the end of July. So you have a couple of weeks of the status quo, but then we're really shaking things up. And I genuinely think it's for the better. Fuck Alex. He didn't pay rent. Alex did pay rent. He just texted me.
Okay.
That's great. We're not going to get evicted.
But if we get evicted, only his credit would.
I want to put more emphasis on the podcast, and part of that is getting to a much more consistent schedule with something that's sustainable for us in our time, because we do have to play these games in our free time, which waxes and wanes a lot. Especially next week, you're going to be gone away for Comic-Con, so we're not going to be playing any games.
But the good news is that con season after August is over, which means I will have way more time.
We are going to TwitchCon. Some people are curious about that. We're going to TwitchCon. Did we talk about that, Nick? We're going to TwitchCon.
When is TwitchCon? Because I might be in Korea.
No, I think you're not in Korea. When is TwitchCon 2019?
Friday, September 27th, 2019 to Monday, September 30th, 2019.
I'm definitely in Korea.
I'm going to TwitchCon. By myself, I guess?
I'm September 14th through October 4th. I told you this several times.
I'm just saying you plan bad dates. Hey, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? No, you're good. We're just finishing.
We're still in the middle of. We're still fine. It's cool. Hang out. Yeah. Say hi. No. Yeah, you should floss. I don't think anyone can see the camera.
No, they will right now.
Oh, here we go. You can fix that.
Is that Television's Parker Games? Yeah, it's very good.
I feel like you've practiced about as much as Ninja has, which is not as much as you need to be famous. Yeah, we'll be at TwitchCon. The next game, Nick, which I haven't approved this with you.
Yeah, what's up?
At all. So I hope it's okay. I wanted to make it shorter. I think we should play the Red Strings Club.
Okay, we can play that.
That's it? That easy? You don't even want to argue about it?
I know what that is, and it's a short game, which is fine.
So that'll mean that we can have a much quicker turnaround than whatever the last month.
It'll be a very quick turnaround. So go download the Red Strings Club. I know it is a very narrative-heavy game. And
people love those, right?
And play through that. It'll be a lot of fun. And we have some guests over, so that does it for Joey Hates Movies.
That's the wrong podcast, Nick. What the fuck?
Shoot. Sorry, it's Garbage Game Club. Sorry.
Thank you.
This is Garbage Game Club. And if you liked anything we did here today, consider backing us over on patreon.com/cybergarbage.
Are you sure it's not a backslash?
No, it's a /.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Positive?
Positivo.
Okay.
And if you do that, that helps us continue this little operation we got going on here. But other than that, we got to go attend to our guests. So thank you all for joining us for another Garbage Game Club. We will see you next time when we play the Red Strings Club. That'll work. We can make that happen.
I'm scared that we're not going to get enough lead time. We're not going to have enough graphics for the new show. I should, call Jason Woot and ask him if he wants to make something.
Yeah, it's also a thing that can happen. Very reasonable to assume.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm getting messages.
Is it from our landlord saying that Alex paid rent?
Oh, no. Just one of my coworkers got their esophagus looked at. There's a weird emergency thing, but it's fine.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
You'll have to tell me about that later.
Yeah.
Was it Corrado?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. You want to do like a sync clap? Be
No,
like,
we're-
podcast starts.
We're already
You
recording.
can't like. Remember, dude. We gotta get it like a certain.
I know it's fine. I barely started recording.
Okay.
We just got that little that coworker nugget. That's about
That
it.
coworker nugget's it?
Yeah.
Oh, they missed all my good stuff. Jokes about butts.
Mm-hmm.
I told the one about the hairy anus man. We left hairy anus in one of our cuts that we sent to Disney.
Oh no.
Fun fact: Disney, you can't say hairy anus, but you can say rectum.
Really?
It's clinical.
Wrecked them. Damn nearly killed them. Doo-doo-doo.
I'm surprised that you're able to wear the jacket. This won't make sense for the audio version, but I am sweating.
Well, I mean, the jacket, it's hot already. All this does is just keep whatever heat I have inside. It's fine.